Hello and welcome to Philosophy Vibe, the channel where we discuss and debate different philosophical ideas. Today we're going to be diving into some political philosophy and looking into Robert Nozick and his entitlement theory of justice. Interesting. So, Robert Nozick was a 20th century philosopher whose works covered a wide range of philosophical subjects. In 1974, Nozick released the political philosophy book Anarchy, State and Utopia. It was within this book that Nozick questioned, does society even need a state? So, is government even necessary? Nozick's conclusion was that society should in fact have the most minimal government possible. The sole responsibility of the state was to protect its citizens' life, liberty and property. That was it, nothing more. Nozick was completely against a big, bloated government interfering in citizens' day-to-day lives and private dealings. Nozick argued that anything beyond the state protecting its citizens against force, theft and fraud, as well as the enforcement of contracts, would inevitably violate their natural rights. This was seen as being the polar opposite to another contemporary philosopher at the time, John Rawls, who believed that the state had a responsibility to its least well-off citizens and can use its powers to make the best environment for the least well-off. This, of course, included redistribution of wealth in the form of taxation and only allowing inequality if it was to the benefit of the least well-off. For more information on Rawls, please check out our video on him. However, Nozick was vehemently against any government redistribution or any large state governing citizens' private dealings. Because of this, he developed his entitlement theory of justice as a guidance to the private dealings of free individuals and the accumulation of private property and wealth generation. This has been seen as one of the bedrock philosophies behind free market capitalism, and Nozick himself has been championed by minarchists and libertarians alike. In this video, we will look at the entitlement theory further and discuss some potential philosophical and social problems and objections that can arise. This sounds really interesting. So, how does Nozick lay out his entitlement theory of justice? It seems like a philosophy that tries to structure an individual's approach to private property and living together in a functioning society would be quite a complex endeavour. You would think so, but in fact Nozick lays out this theory with just 3 very simple principles. Really? Yes, so let's look into them. Principle 1 is around just acquisition. This is around how people come to own things that are previously unowned and part of the natural world. Individuals may acquire this property so long as it's unowned and not taken by theft or fraud. This is especially true if your labour is mixed in. Can you give me an example? Sure. So, say you're walking in a meadow and you stumble across a pear tree. This tree and the pears on it are unowned. It does not belong to anyone. You then reach out and pick a pear. Under Principle 1, this is just acquisition. Your discovery of something unowned, mixed with your labour of picking the fruit, has meant that you now own this pear. This pear is your property and you are entitled to it. I see. Say then you take the seeds off the pear and then plant them on unowned land. You then work at tending to the growth of a new pear tree. The entire tree now becomes your property. This is another just acquisition that you are entitled to. Yes, I understand. The second principle is the just transfer. This is around property exchange and allows individuals to transfer private property as long as the transfer does not involve any theft, fraud or coercion. So, say I pick a bunch of pears from my tree, and I meet with someone who owns their own apple tree, and we agree to swap 5 pears for 5 apples. This is a just transfer. I am happy to exchange my property for his property. There is no fraud or force involved. We have both voluntarily entered into this agreement. Upon exchange, the 5 apples now become my property that I am entitled to, and the 5 pears becomes his property. A just transfer. Yes, this makes sense. And finally, the third principle is around just rectification. This is how to deal with and punish those who have acquired property unjustly and how to compensate the victims. It is here where government is needed. This is what the minimal government should be used for, protecting people's property and deciding adequate compensation and punishment should someone break principle 1 or 2. So, for example, say I stumbled upon someone else's pear tree that was not mine, and I helped myself to a bunch of their pears. This is theft, an unjust acquisition. And say I then went to the person who owned the apple tree and threatened to chop down his tree or threatened him with violence if he did not give me some apples, to which, through fear, he gave me the apples. This is an unjust transfer. So principle 3 is there to protect individuals from these situations happening. Yes, so this is where, say, a police force or courts of law would naturally flourish. In accordance with principle 3, this would be the minimal government Nozick explains. Correct. So we can see with these 3 principles how private property and free market capitalism would indeed flourish, and a big government would not really be needed outside of just regulating these 3 principles. These principles are all society really needs. Consider this. One comes upon unowned land and decides he wants to make use of this land. He is entitled to this land, so through just acquisition, this land now becomes his. As he has acquired this land, he begins to work the land, growing crops, fruit trees, etc. This now becomes his just acquired property. This individual begins selling and trading his produce for money and other things, and here we have just transfer. This is free market capitalism without government interference. We can also imagine someone who acquires a number of different things through different people through just transfers and goes on to invent something new. This brand new invention becomes his property and he is able to mass produce this invention and starts trading it with others. Again, a perfect free market system without the need for state intervention. Yes, I see. So, if I'm correct, Nozick would see government taxation as unjust. Effectively, taxation is under coercion. You must pay your taxes or face a penalty. If you do not agree to taxation, then it would be an unjust transfer. Yes, correct. Of course, the minimal government would need to exist and the people in the society would decide how much needs to be allocated to making sure principle 3 is upheld. But generally, taxation is seen as unjust, and so is any redistribution for forced equality. To illustrate this point further, Nozick gave the Wilt Chamberlain example. Wilt Chamberlain was a very famous basketball player during the 70s. Nozick asked us to imagine that Wilt Chamberlain has signed to a basketball team. However, he will only play if 25 cents of each ticket sale goes to him. This is completely a free decision. If the fans want to see Wilt, they can freely pay their ticket. The team owners have also agreed to these terms. Now imagine 1 million fans come to the stadium, each paying for their ticket, excited to see Chamberlain. 25 cents of each ticket goes to Chamberlain, so by the end of the night, Chamberlain gets paid $250,000, which is a lot more than any of his teammates. Is Chamberlain entitled to this money? Yes, of course. This was a just acquisition. All the fans voluntarily chose to come to the game and buy their ticket. The team owners agreed to Chamberlain's contract demands. So this is a just transfer. Where is the injustice? There is no injustice here. So how could one logically argue that money needs to be taken from Chamberlain and redistributed to other players or even other members of society? If Chamberlain's acquisition of the money is just, then surely taking any of it from Chamberlain would be unjust, and as such this shows how involuntary redistribution is unjust. Yes, I see. And so that is the entitlement theory of justice. 3 principles that underpin the just acquisition of property that overlooks the wealth creation and the role of a minimal government. Very interesting. This is actually really straightforward, and initially this does sound like all you would need for a well-functioning society. The free market sounds so simple, so you can easily see the argument in favour of a minimal government. Indeed. However, we know that life is not that simple, and there can be potentially huge problems with Nozick's entitlement theory that really need to be considered in real-world terms. Like what? You can easily conceive of private property that can be justly acquired, yet through this just acquisition and its continuation, it has huge negative effects on society at large. Can you give me an example? Okay, let's go back to your land acquisition example. Let's say someone comes across a field of apple trees, the only one of its kind in that specific society. This person now justly acquires the land and begins tending to the apple trees, so they own all the apples. This person now has a complete monopoly on all the apples in that society. No one else can own any apples, and this person can charge whatever they want for the just transfers. Surely this is not fair or just. Or what if someone owns the land where the town's water supply runs through? This person effectively owns the water to the entire town, and as such has a monopoly on the water supply, charging extortionate prices for water, putting all people into poverty. Yet their acquisition is perfectly just, according to the entitlement theory, but clearly this is not the case. Yes, I see the problem. You also mentioned about the just acquisition through invention. So what if someone invents a life-saving drug to a horrible illness? They have entitlement as it's their property. Should they be allowed to restrict the distribution of the drug? Or perhaps, again, charge extortionate prices so only the rich can get the medicine? What if the person is a horrible bigot and has hatred for certain people in that society? Should they be allowed to withdraw consent to offer the drug to specific people or demographics? This is horrible behaviour, yet it all seems just under the entitlement theory. Well, not exactly. Monopolies like this were in fact considered by Nozick, and as such, he appealed to the Lockean Proviso in this situation as an add-on to the entitlement theory. What's that? The Lockean Proviso was a clause set by John Locke in his own political philosophies on liberalism and property rights, whereby individuals have the right to private property providing there is enough and as good left in common for others. This means that the entitlement theory of course allows one to accumulate private property and wealth as long as society at large is not affected. One person's accumulation of private property must still leave enough for others to do the same, and the quality of what is left must also be as good. So no, one person cannot own all the apple trees in the entire society or all the water supply, as this clearly violates the Lockean Proviso, as there's not enough for others. Similarly, one cannot have the full control and distribution of a life-saving drug, as once again this is not leaving enough or as good for others. By including the Lockean Proviso in the entitlement theory, we can effectively eliminate the unjust and unfair creation of monopolies. Right, okay. That makes sense, and I agree with that. But think about what this does to the wider theory. This is supposed to be a libertarian minarchist theory underpinning small government and free market capitalism. To me, the inclusion of that proviso entirely destroys that underpinning. How so? Think about the size of government you would need to manage this proviso, to make sure that enough and as good is available to enough people in all areas of private property. Think about the bureaucracy needed, how much the government would need to be involved in all areas of private property acquisition and transfer to make sure the proviso is upheld. Think about how much that would cost, and subsequently how much in tax revenue would need to be generated to oversee such huge government intervention. I am not challenging the Lockean Proviso, but I do not see how the Lockean Proviso can be included in a free market minarchist theory. To rely on this proviso relies on big government, a lot of intervention and a lot of taxation, which completely contradicts where Nozick was starting from. Good point. If you would like the script to this video and you would like to help support the channel, then please check out the Philosophy Vibe Paperback Anthology Volume 3, Ethics and Political Philosophy. It's available on Amazon, and it's a compilation of a number of our scripts on ethics and political philosophy. It's a great read. It covers some fascinating political philosophy topics around the state, liberty, and more. You also have a lot around normative ethics and meta-ethics as well. This will make a great study guide for those studying political philosophy or ethics at college, and all sales really help out this channel and we really appreciate it. The links are below. But that's all the time we have for now. Thank you for watching. We hope you enjoyed the vibe. And what does everyone else think? Is Nozick's entitlement theory a great framework for society? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to like and share, and for more philosophical debates and discussions, please subscribe to the channel. Take care, and we look forward to seeing you all soon. Bye bye.